My name's Chad Gray. I'm with Insight at the Collaboration Center of Excellence. I've got Kevin Curtin, one of our senior solution architects with us, and Anna Donnelly, one of our product managers. Appreciate you guys joining us today. We are going to talk a little bit today about why organizations are really having a hard time executing this hybrid work model. We get a definition of it from all our, from Microsoft, from Cisco, from Zoom, and everyone has their own definition of it. And then as we talk to clients, what we've noticed is that execution is very particular to that client, and they're having a hard time grasping that. Kevin, do you see the same thing? And why do you think these IT organizations are having an issue with that?
I do. I think, first of all, it's all new. And every organization looks at the concept of collaboration a little bit differently, right? Based on their business model and based on the culture. So it really, everyone has their own take on how people are going to be productive, how people are going to use tools, and ultimately, how we see those new patterns that evolve inside each unique culture. So really, it's a matter of trying to get to a point where we have a standard or some kind of cultural standard where using the tools that we have, the platforms we have today, start to make a lot more sense to people over time, just by trend and exposure, right? So I think
Right.
the user has a big part of that, but we're still kind of building that.
Yeah, I think you made an interesting comment about the cultural standard, right? What is that cultural standard? And as we look back previously, call it pre-pandemic, right? That standard was, hey, we get up, we go to the office 8 to 5, we have a desk, and we have a meeting with someone else, right? We walk over to a conference room and we have that meeting with everybody there. Or if it was a remote participants, we use the big speaker phone in the middle, right, and called them up on a audio conference call, and that was the standard. And what I saw happen was that, hey, that standard got blown apart, right? Everybody went home, and we very quickly adjusted and made amends that we could actually do the same thing at home, either through video conferencing, like we're doing here, even still over phone calls, through asynchronous messaging, so chat messaging, emailing, right? It became apparent, and that became the norm. And even from a handset of a phone being next to you, that became the norm. Because I remember for years we fought, basically go to soft phone. No, we can't go to soft phone. We need to have a physical phone on our desk. All of a sudden, all that was gone. And that standards changed. And so what I see is when people come back into the office, or if they do come back into the office, or why do they come back into the office? We'll get there, right? Is what are they coming back to the office for, and how do they adjust that? Nearly a habit, right? This is the habit I've gotten into working now. How do they adjust it now, right?
Yeah, but isn't it that there's no definition, and everybody's definition is different? Is what I think it is, and it's generally set. The tone is set by whomever it is that's making the decisions at the very top, right? So it's not the people that are making decisions for, whether or not this group is actually more productive working remotely, or we absolutely have to have these folks at home. I mean, it's that you've got some organizations who say no, there's no such thing as hybrid work at our company, right? You've got the Elon Musks of the world who say stop pretending to work at home, and then you've got the other side of it who are like, yes, work at home, we're more productive, it's great, we don't have to worry about offices and this and that. And I feel as though as new players come to the market, the idea of going through the effort of purchasing the building and the physical space is probably, from a cost savings perspective, you can put that into R&D. There's so much more that can be done if you are a newer organization. I feel like that's the direction it's going to go for toward moving forward. Whereas some of these other folks who are like, stop pretending to work, that's going to look a little bit more like the old model. But then you have in between, where everybody's like, okay, hybrid is you come into the office 4 days a week, right?
Yeah.
Others that say we only need to work 4 days a week. We don't need to work 5 days a week. So it's all over the place. It's complete chaos right now, which is why I think why there is so much, it's so nebulous what to do, how to address it, is because nobody can agree on a definition.
Yeah, they're guessing, or they're I don't know if anybody's guessing. I don't say they're guessing. They're going back to what we're familiar with, right?
Mhm.
And that's what you talk about, that 3 days on, 2 days, or 3 days in the office, or 3 days at home, 2 days in the office, or whatever that combination. You're seeing that quite a bit. And I really think that there's not and I sit back and I'm like, what's the reason for that, right? What if how does that make me or make a user any more productive just because I'm in the office 2 days and then home 3 days? And I really think that's a compromise from that cultural standard that we used to know, right? I am set on that. You got to be in the office. You got to be in front of people. You got to be in the same building. Here we're going to compromise, right? We're going to let you stay at home and we do that. It's not really, and that's not what hybrid work or what the model is about. The model is about, hey, how can I be more efficient, more productive, more, and also create sort of a work-life balance, right?
Mhm.
I have the tools, because used to, why did we go to the office? When I was 20 something, why did I go to the office? Well, that's where everything was. That's where my printer was. That's where my phone was. That's where my PC was. I didn't have a laptop. I had a big tower PC, right? So I had to go in the office to get work done. And that's why I went there. And so it's really a compromise. And I think that's why organizations are struggling, is because it's a compromise of, here's the way I think it should work. Here's the way you think it should work. And we're just going to compromise and mix them together. We're really not going to have a purpose-built uh, plan around hybrid work that really drives that, like the tech. Kevin, you mentioned the technology, right? That really matches that technology with what these users are doing and what they need to do, and create that hybrid work. It's just, hey, let's just all come into the office. And I question that, because I'm like, why do I come into the office? It needs to be purpose built.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, some additional perspective too. I think there are people who are comfortable with using the tools that we have today, and others that are still kind of struggling to, sort of have an equal voice, say, in meetings, and find, maybe meeting virtually as opposed to how they would conduct themselves in a real presence around their colleagues, maybe differently, right? So if you're used to, being on camera, right, and you're used to having your office set up for that modality of meeting, it may come more natural. So some people, I think, probably are still struggling with, how to feel like they've got that voice in a meeting, a typical conference, because they're not in person with their colleagues. So I think that's another aspect of it too, right? That how do you measure that?
Right.
How do
So
you
for
make decisions as an IT organization to support whatever changes or whatever cultural shifts need to happen in order to help people feel more comfortable on camera, for example.
Yeah, and I think that's where they're missing that. I mean, yeah, how do they do that? But I don't even know if they're thinking that direction, right? They're thinking, hey, we're coming back into the office. We've got 50 meeting rooms. Hardware's probably 3 to 4 years old. We need to go put new hardware that is compatible with whatever collaboration platform we use, right? Maybe, if we started using Teams, we started using Zoom when we went home. So we need to re-outfit what we had to that model, that legacy conference room concept. And that's just another miss, right? Because why would why re-outfit it the same way for the same purpose in a
Mhm.
hybrid model or a post-pandemic model, in the sense that it's not going to be used the same? Because if I'm used to working, and I think this is what people are going to figure out or see, right? I'm curious. My prediction is that, hey, they're going to come into the office if they have to, and they're going to set at their either a hotel desk, or they do have a cube, just like they do at home. And when a meeting comes up, they're going to go right back to the same habit they've had for the last 2 years, which I'm going to join that meeting remotely. I'm going to sit right here. Why do I need to get up and walk across the building to sit with 3 other people and look at a bigger screen of the remote person, right? Uh, I question that and how effective that is, because that's when you get into that meeting equality conversation.
Yeah.
When you've got some people in person and some people remote. If everybody's remote, meeting equalities, it's fairly equal, right? If everybody's in person, it's fairly equal. It's when you mix the two, um, and I'm not sure. And we're seeing all kinds of technology to try to make to bring that gap closer. But I'm just not sure it'll happen with the technology.
Chad, what's your thoughts? Go ahead.
Go ahead,
And
this
there's a good
is
example
why.
right there. That's a good example. There we go. Right.
There you go.
Awesome.
So I mean, this is why, though, I feel like the most successful models for hybrid work are what you described as purpose driven. So you're not just going in on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, or Monday and you're out of the office on Monday and Friday. It's about going to actually meet and collaborate with someone. Otherwise, you're correct. Those habits, you're going to go into the office to just sit and stare at your screen. And that's where I think it comes, it's twofold. So number one, purpose driven, which means I know that on this day I'm going to meet with these people. And then number two, the thing that needs to go with it is the change to the collaborative spaces rather than just the old, what you're calling the legacy meeting rooms, right?
Right. Right.
And I think the technology and everything that comes with it is really just as important at driving success as making sure that you're there for a reason and not just there so that your managers and your leadership can see you.
Yeah, and here's another question too, just for a quick discussion. So, some organizations are redefining their workspaces, right, around hybrid office work, and other organizations are probably just repurposing, the same office spaces that people are used to. And I think that can maybe be. I mean, I can put myself to think about how I would feel. I would maybe be confused sometimes, right? If I can remember being amongst all my colleagues in one big common space, and then a couple days a week I'm going in and it feels empty. Maybe there's a few people around me, where I work, and it just feels like I don't have as much connection, or I'm getting used to a different kind of work-life balance when I work from home, right? And so that could also be something that is difficult to transition to, right? That kind of flexible model of working in different places, and then
Mhm.
also, how do you feel supported, right, in each of those situations? One is you're in your home and you have your home network that's a part or an element of whether or not you're online, and you've got reliable connectivity, and you need some kind of support sometimes, right, where we wouldn't depend on your IT to help you with things that you're normally not into, right? Your home router and Wi-Fi settings and all that kind of stuff. And then when you're at the office, right, you have a completely different, paradigm of the things that you need to be successful, like technically. So, yeah,
Even
there's
yeah, I was even technically just made me think about this because you think about being uncomfortable going into those new workspaces, and every day you come in, right, you're in a different workspace. Obviously, we travel quite a bit. I travel quite a bit, and so I feel less effective when I'm traveling, working out of the airport, out of a hotel. Even though I've got a nice room with a desk at the hotel, I've got a desk, I've got my PC. I still don't have my three monitors. I still don't have
Mhm.
my coffee machine where I know it's my space, right? This is my space right here where I'm at right now. And I in the cubicle world, right? That was my cubicle. Had pictures of the kids and whatever, and it was sort of mine. And that's where I went. I could leave my pen in a certain spot, and I come back, and my pen's in that certain spot every day. Where I think in an open space or a hot desking situation, right? You run into this is not my space. It's every day I'm moving in and I'm moving out. No different than at
So
the
what
airport.
does
Yeah.
so what technology really supports then that? Because the hoteling space, again, that's one of those things. Are you there just to be seen, or do you have a purpose, right?
Hmm.
You're never really going to get around the situation when you're traveling and all of that. That is what it is. But
Right.
if you are someone who is required to be in an office at some point in time, what are the trends that you're seeing? Um, whether it be hardware or solutions or whatever it is that are really driving a little bit more
Here's
success.
a real easy one. How many people, I'm probably, if you could take a survey, when they're out of the office, or even when they're in the office, nowadays, because everybody is using some kind of probably more than likely a cloud collaboration platform now. um, have to get familiar with more than one platform, right? Because
Mhm.
maybe they're being sent invites from other people from different platforms they're not familiar with, right? Previously, they didn't really have to worry about that too much, but now it might be not so uncommon to see Zoom, meetings and Microsoft meetings and Cisco meetings and different things, and that's got to really probably uptick the help desk, ticketing. I would think, everywhere.
think it
Yeah.
does from a supportability, from a management aspect. I think it's a burden on the IT. I'm not sure it is from the user endpoint, from the user's aspect, right? I think, yeah, like you said, we'll call it back in the days, right? We came in the office, we had email, we had printers, and we had audio conference calls, and everybody, for the most part, had Microsoft Office, right? It was Word and Excel, and that's what you were sharing across, so it was fine. Um, and you didn't really collaborate in a chat or video method right outside your office. And you look at today's users, especially the younger generations come into it, and you look at their what they're used to. They're used to multiple apps for whatever they're using, right? They're going to open up any of their phones, right? They open up their iPhone, they've got 5 different apps for 5 different things. And for them to say, oh, I go to this app for this, and this app for this, and this app for this, that's normal to them, right? That's not what we hear from a technology standpoint, from a management, from the IT org. That's not what we want, because that's a nightmare. But I think from a user standpoint, if you say, hey, if you walk into a room and you've just used the right app for the right situation, maybe there's probably a generation gap some, but I think most users that are that younger generation can adapt to that very easily. And that's wouldn't be a surprise to them, where it would be, when I've been in IT the whole entire career. So it's a surprise to me. So I'm like, that's a nightmare. But
Yeah,
Right, but
I
what does
agree
that
with you.
even look like though? What does that look like? What are we looking to in the future to satisfy those needs on what the right thing is? Is it a piece of hardware that sits in collaborative spaces that's particularly easy to use? Is it the right solution? Certainly that's, and you and I can, Chad, can talk about the adoption conversation for a long time, and certainly people have to understand um, how to use things, right? We get that, but I mean, it starts with where are we headed? In which case, what are those solutions that you're seeing that really are cutting it, that are on the edge of where we are going in the future, instead of just trying to repurpose some of the things that we've always that we've been using for maybe 10, 15 years.
Kevin, you want to take a swing at that first?
Yeah, so I think one just real common thing that and just goes back to your question, Anna, that I think we're all aware of is peripheral devices that we plug in, headsets. For example, we're all using some speaker device right now, but it's not uncommon to see a mix of headsets and and speaker devices in meetings. So it's also not uncommon to hear things like, I need to switch my headset, or I have can you hear me? The microphone's not, it's not the audio settings aren't dialed in just right, for that user as they get into the meeting, etc. Maybe because they were joining from another meeting, they got 2 different apps running, things like that, right? So I think, one thing that would probably just, intuitively probably make things a little bit easier would be to make that experience be more seamless for end users at some point, so that there's just a better flow of device control, really, maybe in the software. That's just one thing I can think of that
Yeah.
comes through.
I
Oh, go ahead, Anna.
I hear a lot, and I agree with this idea that spatial audio is important for equity.
Yes.
That and I would have never have agreed had I not joined a meeting in the metaverse, and
Mhm.
the person who was on my right, I would hear out of my right ear. And you can almost see the gesture and understand, who was going to be talking next. And we're talking about talking over each other and starting and stopping and all of that.
Right.
And so outside of the metaverse, are there solutions then that are really kind of addressing that piece, that equitable
They're
thing?
trying to. From a
Mhm.
technology aspect, that they're trying to, right? We're seeing different, from a camera angle. Can we keep who the speakers are in front of the camera, right? In front of the camera, and you can see mine will move every once in a while as it tracks on me. There's that piece. There's the, hey, I'm the remote participant. And I'm looking into a room, and it's able to take those each members of those rooms and parse them out into individual boxes, right? So there may be 6 people sitting there, and now I see them 6 individual users, just like everybody else on the screen. So I can, I'm not seeing the guy in the front really good and the person in the back very far away. Where we're starting to see, and a lot of this is AI, right? We start playing the AI. We're starting to the technology from a camera aspect of do we use multiple cameras, right? Do we use multiple cameras so we can always see everybody's face? And then no matter, maybe there's we saw them a couple of years ago, the center of table cameras, right? That set the center of the table and watch everybody. In that way, as you're looking at season. So they're trying to do those pieces. But you mentioned spatial audio. In my opinion, that's where it breaks, right? Because
Mhm.
it's not engaging. I won't say it's not engaging. It's less engaging if the audio is not coming exactly from where the video is, even on a screen, right? I mean, we've always, everybody's watched a TV show where maybe the audio is off from the actual TV show, and it just drives you nuts. I noticed last week in a conference, it was smaller people were asking questions behind me, and if I just stayed looking forward, I really took a lot of concentration to understand what they were saying. Versus when I looked back and looked at them saying the words, it was just super. It was just a lot easier, a lot more
Yeah.
engaging. Didn't but I say easier, and it is easier because if I have to sit there and listen to somebody behind me for 8 hours a day, or somebody on video that the sound is coming from a different aspect of where I'm looking at, that's where that video fatigue comes in, and that's where you start losing concentration and you just don't pay attention. And so that I'll be curious to see how that works, because I think that the longer we go, and we've seen it, and I think Kevin, you mentioned it earlier, maybe Annie, you did, hey, the decreased use of video, right? At first, we all went home and everybody's like, we're going to use video. We're going to use video. And then as I think what everybody realized, we're using video, but nobody's looking at the screen. Nobody's
Yeah, you
looking
start
at
to hear the term video fatigue now, more and
yeah,
more.
yeah. And then you saw more and more video. And I can't remember the last call that I've been on that everybody was on video, right? So I think that's interesting. And that goes back into that whole play of when people come back into the office and all these collaboration spaces. I think just to sort of circle back around to what we started talking about, IT hasn't figured out this hybrid, and it's because they're looking at the technology aspect of it, right? If we put cameras in the right place, if we put microphones in the right place, if we get some type of interop between all the Zooms, the GoToMeetings, the Microsoft, the Cisco, if we do all that, we've got all the tools in place, but it's still it's still not being used effectively, right? It's still there, but people are like, well, yeah, that really
So what does
didn't benefit
that
me.
take though? What does it take
Okay.
to get to a place where everybody is engaged? Everybody is doing, I mean,
I
and
think
again,
you
if this
yeah.
is a combination of maybe the latest technology and
And culture.
the
It's kind of like,
culture.
yeah, it takes IT stepping out, taking off the IT hat and putting on, I'll call it the people hat. And what we talk about personas, right? When you start talking about personas, technology goes out the window. How do you work? What do you do during a day? What do you need to access?
Mhm.
I mean, do you even need to see video? I mean, maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know. And it's going to change based on job function, based on maybe culture, right, within the organization. Um, so I think that's where I see IT misses it mostly, is
Mhm.
they will not take off the IT hat. And we're so fascinated, and I get it, I'm the same way, right? So fascinated, can we solve this problem with technology?
Right.
And there's just some things you can't. You've got to make sure you got to match the technology up to the user persona or what the actual use case is. I've always used the example. I can take a plumber and give them an awesome welding kit and all these great welding tools that they take and they go, great, that's really cool and neat, but I work with PVC pipe all day. I can't use it. It's no good to me. I'm going to leave it in the truck, and I'm going to take my pipe wrench that I use all day long with me that I've had for 30 years. And that's what we see, right? They come back in the office or they stay at home. They're going to use exactly what they're comfortable with, that they know works, that doesn't interrupt their day. They're like all of us. Hey, they've got 10,000 things going on. I want to get it done. I want to get on to the next thing. And whether that's at work or whether that's during my personal life.
Yeah, and don't we feel meeting fatigue too these days? I mean, because if we're remote, we're hybrid, we're in the office, and other people are remote. We see that we need to be in meetings a lot more. These virtual meetings, right? Whereas when everyone was together, you didn't really need to have as many meeting instances, right? It's for internal collaboration. So I think that has to have some impact on general productivity and overall feeling of value and productivity as well, right? You have to have a screen up almost. I've always thought about this is when we got into the age of really having a lot more meetings, even pre-pandemic. It almost felt like you needed a dual screen setup, right, for everybody, right? Some screen. This was your collaboration screen, and the screen where you were busy. So, what do you guys think about that?
I think the metrics that are tied to that is really what's going to drive best practices. A lot of what I support these days are those types of measurement tools outside of the just straight PBX, the actual. But you're absolutely correct that meeting fatigue, productivity are absolutely tied. People are multitasking because they're spending their entire days in meetings. They don't have time to do anything. Or you can see after hours that they're responding to how many emails, right? Because they were on the phone all day long. These are things that we can measure and we can see now, and then we can address that cultural piece that says that everybody who is tied to whatever thing has to be in that one meeting. And it's really easy. I feel like the what you said, Chad, about being in video, right? We have video fatigue and nobody wants to be on. I think if you have the right people in a meeting who are all engaged, they should be okay with having their video on. But that's usually the time when I don't want to have it on, was when I know I'm only kind of just listening to hear my name. And then so that they don't know that I'm also doing my work. So it is really, I think we come back to this like purpose-driven collaboration rather than just collaboration for collaboration's sake.
And I love the way you talked about the metaverse, and you just put a light bulb over my head. So imagine in the future, when we think about the future collaboration, there'll be rooms where people are just in. You can pop in and out all the time. So why couldn't we see some trending, and perhaps we do now, that same kind of behavior and usage of since we're talking about video conferencing. For example, somebody who just has a video conference on in a meeting bridge all day, and that's a working bridge, right? You can pop in and pop out whenever you want. Mm-hmm. That seems like it's gonna be the standard, or a very typical scenario, when we look at the future of emergence, right? So I would bet that there's probably work cultures that already have that kind of work use case, if you will, for meetings, right? Where we've got people who just simply maybe work in a setting where they don't need to feel like they have to have direct eye contact with the camera, and they're just there for video presence, right? And then there's and then that could be a working meeting, right? And then there's a kind of a persistent stand up of we're gonna be here if you want to come and check on us, and our team is here all day working together, right? You're not in the meeting, you're not in a meeting, but this is where the core subject matter is being focused. If you want to come in and jump in, if you got some stuff to contribute, or you want to check on how they're doing, etc. So I mean, those are interesting things, and I don't know we're at that point, generally speaking, everywhere right now. It's still, hey, do I need to come in the office? Do I need to not come in the office? What do I do? Like, where do I sit? Those things we talked about right now. And everybody loves to go in the conference room because the conference room's got all the new space age stuff, right, for the most part. And, otherwise, you're stuck behind your laptop with your little video camera and maybe your plug and play peripheral. So, yeah, I think those are important things as well to take into account. Really, the basic human psychology of how we feel and ultimately how we are thinking ahead and being creative with the tools.
Yeah. I think it's just thinking back to the whole conversation, right? We've talked about, hey, there's the technology, there's the IT groups that are very focused on technology. There's the users who don't really, I don't say they don't care about the technology. They really don't care what the technology is as long as it doesn't interfere or interrupt my day. And then I think it's interesting the metrics that we talk about, that, not the metrics of the, of how many bits and bytes and drop packets and uptime and that we're used to, but it's those metrics of how things are being really used, right? And we're seeing these user experience, but it's a combination of all that we've seen. All of us have seen. We've all talked with different clients, and there are different, I guess, phases, right? Different points of that time of how they're going to get to hybrid work, and hybrid work is just going to be defined differently. So I think it's interesting of how that's going to come together, and the new technology and how people approach it. But I think that's why IT's missing it. They're only looking at it from the technology aspect. When we started this, right? And it needs to be a broader conversation, overall culture, technology, use cases, purpose driven, right? And that's what will define that hybrid work policy, hybrid work culture. That actually works for that particular company. And it's not going to be a one size fit all. And that's what makes it, I think that's what we see in the market from a lot of people is that it's a one size fit all. This is how you do hybrid work. No, it's, hey, you've got those factors and make it very specific to your organization to do it. But running out of time, guys. So Anna, thank you. Kevin, thank you. If you'd like to learn more about what we do here at Insight, especially around this hybrid work model, because we could spend hours talking about this, right? Lots more topics on there, but especially how we can help your organization out. Feel free to visit us at solutions.insight.com, and we appreciate everybody listening.